Hey fellow founders, how you going? Welcome to another recap of Founder University Week 9. 3 weeks officially remaining in the program, although I expect maybe some of the pictures and that kind of thing might happen after that, so we'll just have to wait and see. But it's coming to a very quick close, unfortunately, because it's been a really interesting and worthwhile program. So this week's main focus in terms of the live call was from Greg from CapBase, basically talking all things raising capital and the impact that that can have on your cap table, and what are some of the gotchas that you need to be aware of in terms of basically bad deals if you provide too much equity to advisors or early stage employees, or take highly dilutive capital from investors. Then that basically makes your cap table look messy, and it can put you in a situation where it's almost impossible for other people to give you money and invest in your company, because there's then not enough skin in the game for you as the founder, or they see that there's some advisor who's got 5% of the company for doing 1 day a month of work. And while there are ways around that, recapitalizing the company, it's obviously messy and not ideal. So it was a super interesting session. A lot of great topics and things that I had read about and heard about in the past, but it was always good for a recap. If you are interested, as you should be, in the topic, if you're someone who's raising capital or building a startup, or even just working for a startup really, and you want to understand hey, if I've got a portion of equity as an early stage employee, what are the ways in which that gets diluted over time? There's another great book that I read a long time ago called Venture Deals, Be Smarter Than Your Lawyer and Venture Capitalist. It was by Brad Feld, who's another well-respected and well-known VC. And he talks about a lot of what Greg talked about, as well as different ways in which you can lose control of your company. I might just turn this monitor off, see if it doesn't fix the kind of brightness on my face. So apologies that I'm all washed out. But in that book, he also talks about, obviously, one way of losing control of your company is that you own less than 50%, which is, obviously going to happen in time if you raise enough capital. And actually, Greg from CapBase was saying that, your main goal should be to maintain board control and maintain at least 50% amongst the co-founders at your Series A level. And then in Series B, you expect to lose that control. But Brad Feld also talks about, it's not only percentage ownership, but also board seat control, right? So the board's responsible for hiring and firing the CEO, and once you lose board control, you essentially open yourself up to being fired as CEO if you're not performing. Now, obviously, that's not just, hey, you've lost control, that normally happens, but, something to be aware of. And then the other aspect that's also covered in that book is different voting rights and how it can apply to different shares. So some founders who have very sought after companies that people want to invest in are sometimes able to negotiate and have basically shares that have high voting rights. So while they give up, and lose, or not lose, but they've have been diluted by to have less than 50% ownership, they may have shares that then give them 2 or 3 to 1 voting rights kind of thing. I think Mark Zuckerberg's probably a classic example of that. Obviously, very hot company that people wanted to invest in back before they went public. And I think even post-public, he had preferential shares. Similar thing, I think, with Google, but again, I'm not 100% sure. I'm just racking my brain to remember some of those companies that may have had that structure, but they certainly do exist. So that's another good book to keep an eye on, Venture Deals, if you kind of want to dive into that. I wasn't able to join the live session, the midweek catch up this week. Had other commitments, which was a bit of a shame. Some of the other content, covering things like product market fit, competitive analysis, and that kind of thing. And that's one that, I do like to talk about a lot, competition, because at least when I mentored a lot of students at the Sydney Youth Uni, and when I speak to other founders who are maybe newer at the game, it's very common for them to try and minimize the amount of competition that they have or perceive to have. And I always bring up the example of Uber, because it's just easy, I think, for me. I say, look, if you think about Uber, who is their competition? Obviously, a lot of people say, taxis. Yeah, it's right. But like, really, what Uber is a transportation company from point A to point B. So their competition is me taking my own car, me getting on the bus, me getting on the train, me taking a cab, me riding my bike, me walking, me carpooling with a friend. All these different options. Now, some of those options are closer competitors than others. But when you really kind of boil it back, there's competition everywhere, right? And I think that's just something to be aware of. You could be building, you know, an application for marketing to track marketing, or what I'm doing with Acquire to help, sales and pre-sales experts. My competition is everything down to a piece of pen and paper. You could do a lot of what you can do in Acquire as it stands today on pen and paper. Now, is that highly efficient? Is it easy to share those notes? Is it easy to collaborate as a team on a piece of pen and paper? Is it easy to pull up, a previous piece of paper that you'd written notes on about the same thing, it's 3 months ago? No. That's where obviously software and software as a service has an advantage, but you could do it, right? I always have a really open mind to competition. I think there's competition everywhere. And to be honest, it doesn't, necessarily scare me as much as it might scare some other founders. Because, even if there was no competition, and you create this awesome idea and you go gangbusters, very quickly competition will emerge. And there's trying to remember where I don't have the book with me. There's a book called Blitzscaling by Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn. I think that's who it is. Let me just double check that. Blitzscaling. Don't want to say the wrong info here. Blitzscaling. Yeah, Reid Hoffman. There we go. Sorry, I just couldn't remember off the top of my head. I was pretty sure it was him, but I did want to double check. And in that book, he talks about Airbnb. And in the early days of Airbnb, there was a German competitor who started up and, basically did what Airbnb did. And it was kind of like Airbnb was this unique idea that had come out, highly successful, at least initially, signs of being highly successful, and someone tried to copy him. And then he talks about how basically the Airbnb founders decided to, tackle that competitor basically by going all in and really expanding super quick. But yeah, I think that's just an example of, even if there is no competition or very low competition, that won't necessarily last, especially if you've got this hot idea that starts making a lot of money, right? So yeah, that's on the competition front. From a personal level, I shared my pitch, which I'm going to post to YouTube as well, just because I want to be transparent and like doing that thing, with Charlie from Launch, and he was very great to give some feedback. Got to write him an email tonight, say thank you. 2-minute pitch. I had to cut a few things out that I really wanted to say, and Charlie picked up on maybe putting some of those things back in. To get it under the 2 minutes, so I've got to kind of figure out how to fit in some of those things that I felt would be important. But overall, I was pretty happy with where I'm at currently. Obviously, it'd be great to get some paying customers and all that kind of thing, but got to work on actually creating the paid capability in Acquire. So that's coming. And then with Acquire itself, so created, implemented an update to the UI for viewing and adding opportunities, which is, I think, been needed. I just, as soon as I started kind of creating the first UI, I was like, it probably needs a bit of an improvement. So I wanted to get that done because that's kind of the crux of what the app can do today. The second aspect is the ability to define a fit from a pre-sales perspective and a confidence from a pre-sales perspective around an opportunity. Because historically, sales forecasts are done from a salesperson's lens. As in the account executive, or sometimes they're called account manager, sales rep, whatever you want to call it. But pre-sales are the ones there doing the demo. They're the ones who understand the technical requirements. They're the ones who understand the person's problem or the company's problem in a bit more detail and how it maps directly to your solution. So I always feel that there's this missed opportunity to get their lens on it, because an account executive or a salesperson could be like, this deal's definitely going to happen, because they're just hyper positive, right? We are hyper positive by nature, salespeople. And then the pre-sales person could be like, well, hang on a minute, like compared to our competition, we're deficient in these three areas. We know we're more expensive, or we take longer to implement, or whatever it is, right? So they can ground it a little bit more in reality, and that doesn't mean it's a lost deal. It just means like, hey, now we can talk about it and have a strategic kind of point of view on how we tackle this. So if we do take longer to implement, why? Like, what's our story? It could be as simple as, yeah, we take 3 months longer to implement, but the reason why is because we give you these additional capabilities, or because we take longer to implement, we're pulling from more data sources, we've got richer intelligence, or whatever it is, right? Like, if you're in sales, you'll be able to identify these things. So I think, yeah, that's on the precipice of being pushed to production. It's currently in the staging environment, and it works. I just need to do some styling changes to, change colors and that kind of thing, depending on if it's a weak fit, strong fit, etc. So that'll be coming, and then working on the payment side of things. Then after that, there'll be some more changes to basically allowing people to add and change the questions that they want to have in their kind of discovery process. Anyway, this video is getting super long. Just wanted to wrap up there, really. Share that insight, share that recap. Thanks for watching. I know not many people do, but hey, this is a historical record. So if you are interested, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and catch you in the next one. Thanks.